Welcome to Spotlight. I'm your show host, Barbara Ragland, and today we have the honor of interviewing Dr. Shirley Childs, who's a very famous woman and an educator internationally and in the Connecticut and United States community. So, I want to introduce you to Dr. Childs.
I
Welcome to
certainly would. Thank
Spotlight,
you.
Shirley. I'm going to call her Shirley, even though she's
That-
Dr. Childs. I've known her so long.
That's right.
And just think so much of you and all the things that you've done. I'd like to ask you first to give us something about your background. Where did you come from? Were you always in the greater Hartford area?
No, I guess even from the sound of my own little dialect, it would give you an indication that is from New York.
Oh,
Born and reared in New York, but I've been in Connecticut since 1956. That's a long time.
that is.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and then after coming to Connecticut, I had 2 years of college at Queens College, and then completed my undergraduate work at University of Hartford. I went on to get the master's degree there, and I went to UConn to work on a doctorate. And that seems like so long ago too. All right, let's see, I finished in 1977, walked in 1978. Almost seems like just many years ago.
Yeah.
And then about 2002, the calling into the ministry prior to that led me to Yale Divinity School for 3 years. And when I started that, I assumed that's when I retired from education. And I've been in ministry since then, ordained ministry since then.
So, Dr. Childs, I know you've been a very busy person, even though you're in the ministry, and I know you work internationally. Tell us about that.
Well, for the sake of the ministry, I'm at the Metropolitan AME Zion Church in Hartford, place where I've been since I came to Connecticut. And having been the director of Christian education on the local level, then I went on to do the conference level and the regional level. And then just recently retired from both of those, only to pick up the work that I've been doing internationally. I have a project that I'm working on in Ghana, West Africa, and this I do with my nonprofit. The nonprofit is called God's Bridge Over the Atlantic, or GBOA. And what happens is that the kind of teaching that I was doing in Connecticut, not only as a teacher, but a principal at Mark Twain School, just an educator working as a consultant for the State Department of Education, and being involved with, I think it was 52 family resource centers that I had to manage. I wanted to establish one in Africa, and that's what I'm working on now. If I do that in the village where they had installed me as a Queen Mother, that'll be a lifetime accomplishment to have been able to do that. And whereby I can then do teaching with young parents and their children, and also bring in those who are working in the medical fields to provide services for them. All of that in a family resource library.
How large is the village that you work with?
There are 12,000 people in that
That's
village.
large.
Yes, lots of children, young children. And education differs so from America to that country, where for the most part, you have to pay for education, and we don't really appreciate the advantages we have with public education here.
We really don't. We really don't. Do you train teachers over there, or do you just consult with them, or how does that work?
Lately, I have been only consulting with them. The kind of training that I'd certainly like to see them do would be the kind of services that would be provided in the Family Resource Center when it's built. And those kind of services, it would be like we have workshops here. institutes where various times that we would bring teachers in to sharpen their skills, to teach them new trends, to keep them abreast of things that are happening here in America that would be of advantage to them.
So you have a project going on now, and are you fundraising for the project that you're doing in Ghana, or is it a voluntary basis, or is it funded by the Metropolitan Church?
Oh, no, this is all a personal request that I did when I was a student at Yale Divinity, and we went over and we had to work on a project, and so my project became something that wasn't just to get a grade, it was to carry on, and to carry on meant that I would come back, create the nonprofit organization. And what happens with this nonprofit is that I receive donations, contributions, either they are school supplies, especially around the time school is going to start again in August. I would like very much, for those who are interested in it, for $40 they could pay for the tuition for a young child in the elementary school, in the grade schools, for a year. And that is what I feel that it was quite essential right now, that we help to educate as many of them as possible.
How about nutrition over there?
Nutrition is something, just overall health is just an issue.
Okay.
You can add nutrition to it, but their well-being, to know that now in many of the places, and especially in the village where I am, Penny Village, that's Penyi Village in the Volta region, that while it is an area that is rather impoverished, that they do have wells, so the women do not have to walk very far to get water. Nutrition, the women usually are the ones who are working the grounds. They are doing the agriculture. But they're also, as you can see from the attire, they sew, they work in textiles. I mean, they're very good at what they do, but the funds are so limited. I think the average income a day for just simple laborers without education is probably anywhere from 50 cents to $1.
My goodness.
So,
That's something. Like
yeah.
the outfit you're wearing, that you purchase that over there, they make it specifically for you, or is that one of the businesses that they have over there to earn money?
Well, they make them for me, and I pay so that they would have a little livelihood from it. Yeah, economics is certainly so important, that you're either getting it from what you grow and knowing how to even produce that, and then to take that to market at harvest. I mean, that's also an important skill. And then, well, also how to sharpen their skills with textiles and their sewing. But they really do magnificent jobs, whether they're doing it with cloth or whether they're working with beads.
The
Very
cloth
interesting.
is beautiful.
Why, thank
I can't
you.
imagine how they do that. They weave it, or
So, the men do the weaving, the kente, and the women, yes, a lot of it may be tie-dyed or batik, or they have some of their own fabric that they make in Africa in general. And then others come from Switzerland, parts of Europe.
it's really
beautiful.
gorgeous.
Thank
It
you.
really, really is.
Thank you. We don't need to have to put names on them like they do here in America
Right.
at
Yeah.
such expensive prices.
I know.
And I think the expense of it, if you wanted it shipped here, comes from the exportation. You
I
having
think so
to
too.
pay the customs on it.
Which is a hindrance to them.
In that sense,
They,
yeah.
Yeah, they really can't
That sense.
get their wares over here. Then they have to have a market to bring it to.
Right.
And
Right.
know, of course, that would interfere with Bill Glass and all the other people.
Now you understand. That's right.
So
and
I
and their names are imprinted on it. But no, I have one outfit that my name is in it. I said, "Oh, that was really nice."
Oh, yeah.
Yes, it was for our family reunion.
Mm-hmm.
Sure thing.
That is really
Yeah.
good. And we're talking about training and training of parents and that's that's international, and it really is becoming a problem here in the United States. And I can remember years ago when we had Head Start, and you know how that was a
Sure.
requirement for you had the parents had to be involved, and I think now that it's really important that they should be involved even if their kids aren't in Head Start. Can you speak to that?
Well, you know, so much has changed in the years since we were teaching
Yeah.
that we're very happy that Head Start was formed so that it could indeed look at numbers of children who would have preschool experiences before starting kindergarten.
Mm-hmm.
And that hasn't changed. In fact, we're recognizing that there are more and more children who still need it,
Yes.
and we're trying to implement it. I do recall when the state put in $40 million to start the Department of Early Childhood Education so that we could indeed advance this area of early childhood learning. And parents nowadays, I'm not certain that I really truly understand and could put my fingers on what it is that's so needed. For an example, just within the last few days, I heard on the television that an 8-year-old, parents were distracted and left the 8-year-old in a restaurant.
Oh,
How do you do that?
yeah. In England. Yeah.
How do you do that? And then last night I was listening to David, oh, I can't think of his last name right now, minister on the radio.
Mm-hmm.
Can't recall his last name at the moment. Anyway, and his message, David Jeremiah,
Okay.
and in his message, he was describing that here was a family getting into the car. The father put the baby that's in that carrier that you have to strap in the car. He put it on top of the car in order to strap in others and getting other people in the car. And then he got in the car and forgot that the baby was still on the
It's true.
top of the roof of the car, and drove off. And no other motorist, no pedestrian, no one said to him, "You have your child. There's somebody on the roof." He got on the highway. And he was traveling on the highway when he began to accelerate, that he heard this rumbling on the roof, and then he could see in his rearview mirror the baby sliding down right on off the car onto the highway with oncoming traffic. And then Dr. Jeremiah said, "I'll tell you how the story ended later on in the message." Oh!
I know.
And I got distracted, so I didn't understand how it ended. But I just truly pray that nothing happened to the child. But my point being is that we are finding that there are so many distractions these days
Yeah.
that there's no time for us to do what we need to be doing with young children.
Not
Who's
at all.
talking to them? Who's talking to
I
them?
remember when I was education coordinator in Head Start, and one of the programs that I had to work with was in Windsor. I had, Windsor, East Hartford, Enfield, just, all the greater Hartford area. And we were talking about teaching preschool pre-reading skills. And one of the parents says, "Well, I don't know how to read. Could you have a program for me to teach me how to read?" And, you wouldn't even think about that. We were required to go to school. But you'd be surprised that there are pockets of people that are hungry, that are not educated.
Right.
We think, you see a lot of things on the media, but you don't see the hidden poverty in it. And I was going to ask you about Africa. How are they with their children, their early childhood? Do they work with their children when they're that young, when they're 3 and 4 and 5, or
Well, I'll
how's
tell
that?
you.
Or is there that comes from the home?
I'll tell you. I'm in a village where my observations, the women have so much to be concerned about during the course of the day that I hardly ever saw them. I hardly ever saw them having conversations with their children. I mean, not even to talk about, if this was a bottle, to speak of it as a bottle and I filled it with the formula and made it possible for you to drink and I want to nourish it. No conversation about I love you and I'm touching your nose or your mouth. I'm not identified. In my observations, I never noticed any of that. And then when I've had an opportunity to have conversations, the young women would say, oh, there was just so many things they have to think about. Namely, you still have to get the wood for the kindling in order to cook, and what are you going to prepare for the meal? And every meal is prepared fresh, and every meal is eaten. And so there's no refrigeration like we have here. And so you can't think about, I'm going back tomorrow and we're going to have something as a leftover. Oh, absolutely not. That whatever is prepared is fixed, and it has to be done before it gets dark. Because now you're not looking at flicking a switch, you're just looking at candles.
No electricity.
For the most part, no.
For the most part, no.
No. So you're looking at life that's so totally different from here. But children are children, and children still have a thirst for learning. And I'm certain if I had all that equipment that we use here, any of the equipment, and used it over there, that children would thrive in the same way. And it's not to say that they're not. You will, if you haven't noticed, that most of the babies are carried on their backs and they're tied around with the extra cloth. And if they're working in the fields, that's probably about the only movement they're getting as the parents, that mother is bending down in the field and standing up. And when that mother feels that that child wants to void, they really take that wrapping off real quick and put the baby down, and the baby takes care of those needs, and they wrap the baby back up, and tie him back up, and go back to work without having had any other conversation. I'm just amazed at it. But the limited conversation is that I see more women and I see less men in that surrounding. The men may have toiled the field with a heavy piece of equipment if that's available. If that's not available, the women have used all of their essential hand tools. And I think, if we as African Americans had to be there and to do that kind of work, we'd certainly continually thank God for having helped us to get an education and to put us in a different position. But I would tend to believe that education, even for them, would be a way out of poverty. But someone still would have to prepare meals, prepare those same kind of tools. And for the women and the men who are professionals there, I see them working in the cities, like Accra as a capital, and Penny is 3 hours ride from the city, and it's just an incredible experience to think that I could accomplish so much in a short period of time, to have a trust factor built up that things that I would bring or send that would be useful for them in the village, in the schools, and where the schooling is paid for by the government for the staff. But for the children actually coming, so that they would be filling those classrooms, that's what I'm talking about. The $40 would provide for tuition and perhaps even include the
Would that go all the way up to
outfits they wear.
secondary or just elementary?
I'm not certain as to what the secondary tuition would cost, because I'm so busy trying to work at what happens for young children. If you give young children the kind of breaks that we're talking about right now, the same way here in America, if we do it right and Head Start and school readiness, that we won't have problems by the time they get through the 12th grade. That by the time they reach high school, they're reading above grade level and they're able to manage and capture all the other coursework that's necessary, be it physics, chemistry, or whatever it may be, especially English.
Yes, definitely. Because I know when I was an exchange teacher in Puerto Rico, when Gerald Tarazi selected 30 teachers to go over, for immersion and work with the Puerto Rican children, and then you brought a teacher back to live with you. But one thing that they had over there, and I don't understand about all the bilingual here, is that half a day they were taught English, and then they were taught in Spanish the other half of the day. And so when they came to, I had at Burn School, when they came to my classroom, they were better readers than my fifth graders that were monolingual, just English speaking children. Um, and another point is in a lot of countries, children can get an elementary education, but they have to pay for that secondary education.
Yeah.
Not only in Africa, it's in a lot of places.
Yeah.
You have to have the money
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
get your child an education.
I think you described a pure bilingual program where
That's,
you're teaching them in their native language and
that's
also
right.
teaching them in English. Of course, my view is that here in America we ought to teach everybody to be
But I
bilingual.
think so.
But if I go back to the Head Start program that has fostered a true early childhood program for youngsters here in America, we recognize too how long it had been when only a few children had advantage to it. And now that access is open to so many more.
Yes, it
and
is.
and that we do have to educate parents to know that it is important to keep their children and for them to personally be involved as well. And that's again the same kind of early childhood model like to see in a place like a Penny Village, but
Yeah.
like to see it where in third world nations that we're doing more for young children, educating them and educating their parents as well. It does take funding to do a great deal of it, but we took it and we took it up and we find that there are interested people. I find interested people in Ghana by having gotten close with the connections between the church. Well, there are lots of other churches that are representatives in, I happen to be Methodist, but I see Presbyterian, the Episcopal Church, Roman Catholic. I see a number of things that are going on, but overall, much of that is coming to help adults. There is
Yeah,
just
I
so much
see.
that's needed for an adult. I just came from a physical, and insurance, costs will help to pay for that.
Yeah.
But there's no such thing like that in Africa.
No.
In fact, one woman who has become my African sister, whenever she comes to America, I pay for her to have her physical, so that at least she has some semblance and some knowledge of what to do with her. We both have arthritis, but what she can do with her
All of us.
arthritic condition.
Yes.
Yeah, yes. And I would tend to believe, when I'm there, boy, I feel like 15 because the arthritis is under control.
It is,
It's just wonderful. But for them, and their bodies have been used in such vigorous labor, to the extent that I could appreciate them needing medicines and prescriptions as such to keep them
And I'm
them
sure
going.
after the women work in the field and all that, they're
Yeah.
strong. They're very,
Yeah, yeah,
very
but
strong women.
and something as simple as glucosamine, which helps me a great deal.
Yeah.
How do they get it?
Yeah.
And the idea is that you can't take this out of the country and
No.
to take it to someone else, and so then there is a need for them to have those kind of services there. But they don't have doctors' office hours in this village. And we
If a
have,
child gets sick, what happens?
oh golly. Well, you try to find a clinic. We have a clinic in the village, but there's nothing in it. The government built a beautiful building, absolutely beautiful building, and we need to stock it. We get volunteers. We take over some supplies when we're going to every time we go. Medical supplies so that we can do screenings. We want to determine how many women in the village, and they walk from other villages to be screened to determine whether they have breast cancer, diabetes, heart conditions, and even we've discovered that. With many of them having obesity problems as well. I mean, it's the kind of thing that we've seen here, but greatly magnified.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
And just think about how many times, because you know Africa is the largest continent in the world, and
Yeah.
so just all over. It's global.
I just wanted to start with how do we talk to the children? How do we encourage them? How do we get them to use some manipulative materials, even if it's the tools that they work with, to show them how children need to get their muscles and to work other things that they need to do.
Yeah.
Those fine tune those things for them. And then I discovered it's not just looking at the children. I was looking at toddlers and children up to age 5 and 6, just trying to get them from preschool into kindergarten and wanting to establish that. And the next thing I knew was to look at the mothers.
Yeah.
And I wasn't looking at the mothers, I was looking at their grandmothers too, who were still living. And there was just so many issues.
It is.
Sure thing. And then of course too, I got engaged in ministry, and then realized that this is so much a part of what we've been doing, that we learn the call and response and worship from them, and just to know that as poor as it is, they have taught me so much about compassion and love, humility.
Yeah.
Oh, you need to experience it.
I'm sure.
You need to experience in this life. You need to experience it.
I think
Yes.
so.
So one day maybe you will find your way, whether it is to Penny Village or just plant your feet somewhere in Africa on the soil, and you'll discover. Because whether I was in Senegal or Togo or Cote d'Ivoire or in Ghana, I saw the same critical problems with poverty and a desire and a thirst for education, for knowledge.
And we have to say that those are our roots. That's where we came from, and that you know the griots and all of that. Like you said, the call and response that we do in church now, that comes from there.
From there.
So we need to know where we came from, how we got there, our background.
It's a beautiful experience. It's a beautiful experience. And it causes you to be lifted up, to recognize that it's a very rich heritage, to recognize what the land was like, what the continent is like. And I mean, all of the things that have transpired to exhaust many of the resources, those natural resources, and to take them to other countries in Europe. I mean, Africa is a gold mine. It's rich. But poverty is off the charts. Everywhere.
It really is.
Everywhere.
Would you have some words of wisdom that you'd like to share with the audience, some things that you would like to say to us about how it has enriched you here, how you're helping here, or just how we can help you, help the people in Ghana? In closing, you know, your knowledge and your education and your background, and you keep going, Shirley. You just keep going. It's wonderful. And so maybe you would like to impart some things to our Win TV audience, and maybe they need to know that you live right around the corner. Now, I'm not telling them to knock on your door, but that
No,
we have someone like you living in this community is wonderful. And maybe one day you'll be able to get involved in our education system. I don't know whether it's the Board of Education or whatever, but it's needed. It really is needed. Somebody needs to know um, what these children need too. It doesn't, not only in Africa, but the community is evolving and it's changing and it's very diverse. And we
yes.
need somebody with your kind of experience to get involved with the community too. So, in closing, what would you like to talk to us about for a minute, Dr. Childs?
And of course, now seeing that I am in this new place, this new space spiritually.
Okay.
Actually, I probably have been there all my life, but didn't realize that I needed to share it, to reach out, to touch others in the same way. But believe me that spiritually, to learn how to love one another,
Yeah.
these are things that others may say, well, I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual. I don't know, it's some relationship in recognizing who God is. I think that that's important, regardless of who we are.
Yeah.
That whether it's the God of Abraham, Isaac, or Jacob, that they were all connected in that sense
Yeah.
of creation. So in that sense, I would tend to believe that our gathering, our understanding, our caring for each other, it's not taking that game, that toy, that causes us to just interact with the toy. Everybody is doing their own toy. They're trying to win something, improve something with those handheld devices. And they've gotten so far away from relationships with each other. And maybe it's because there is less of a relationship with God. So I kind of pull it all together. I'm not able to necessarily separate it, but to recognize that we do need to develop more opportunities where parents are recognizing that they need to have more interpersonal, connected relationships with their children. Know what your children are doing every day. Find a period of time. I find 12 minutes every day to do absolutely nothing but to listen to God.
Yeah.
Just quiet time. But I'm asking that parents find that time, that at least sometime during the day that they've spent some time with their children. I didn't like the cold, and so I didn't spend very much time watching the little league football games with my sons.
Okay.
But now what I even tried to do it from the car, but you can't really see the field
Yeah,
from
right.
the car. But no, you know, having an arthritic body, you just don't sit outside in
Right.
the cold like that. But nonetheless, it was to talk with them, and I think that more talking, more intimacy with them, know your children, laugh
Yeah.
with them, commune with them, study with them. That I think that's the important thing. That's what we need to get back to. Everybody is doing their own thing.
Own
Come
thing.
back to what family is all about, regardless of how the family is structured. That's another whole issue. But
Yeah.
however it is structured, come back to that quality time that we used to have. Everybody sat down and ate dinner at the
Together.
same time. And if you're not able to do that because of work schedules and the present economy, you still find some time to be with your children. I think it makes all the difference in the world. And show up at school. Be at school. Walk in the classroom. You pay taxes for it anyway to keep it going. Go see how it's functioning. Just be a part of it. When I gasped the last time that I was in even Windsor schools because the children in the class where I was had little regard for the principal even, let alone for me as an adult. I mean, I was just taken aback by that. And I think that it still goes back to the homes.
It does.
I mean, even as a substitute, and the parents whose homes I visited here in Windsor, they know it. Even as a sub, I mean, my feeling and sense, I have a concern. I have that much compassion that I reach out to the parents to know that if they don't get it while they're in elementary school, they'll lose the opportunity because, see, they go from teacher to teacher, from the middle
Yes.
school to the high school, just for subject matters, and if they're not really connected, to whom? So that's what is necessary, to be connected to your family and have an interest in it. Parents, take an interest in your children, because if you don't, who will?
Yeah.
And I just want to encourage them to do that. I know when I was at Mark Twain, every child in the school was mine.
Yeah.
So now that those children have all grown up and they see me and they still remember me, I remember, yes, it was to be fair and square with each of them. I mean, I laugh at them that they still can remember me after so many years.
I know, isn't it something? Because I was in Whole Foods and I met one of the Willingham kids that I had to see in school, and she was putting things back. She said, "Miss Ragland," and I said to myself, she said, "I'm so and so Willingham," and I was like, "How is your brother?" And he's going into medical and this and that and the other. And I told her, I said, she said, "You're still around, huh?"
Absolutely.
And I said, "Yes." And so the other cashier said to her, "I can't believe your age." She said, "Yeah," because I mean, I had those kids 20-something years ago.
That's right.
And they remembered me, and I felt so good, and that they were doing so well, and so it meant that I had some kind of impact on them, even though they were in the first grade. They could remember that, and so it's important. Shirley Childs, I consider you one of our jewels.
Praise the
Okay,
Lord.
and you've done so many marvelous things, and you will continue. And I wish you well in Hartford, in Africa, in the Metropolitan Church, and I wish you well in Windsor. And I hope you
Thank
get
you.
more involved in Windsor because they need you.
Thank you.
So,
and again, I would trust that anyone is interested in God's Bridge Over the Atlantic, or GBOA,
Oh, good. I'm
as a
glad you're mentioning that.
tax-deductible contribution. That $40 goes a long way to help a child. And then what they do is they'll send a picture of that child, and you can follow that child every year with a continuing contribution till they finish school. And that's a nice connection.
They could get in touch with you. Can you leave some information?
Yes, I
Tell
will.
them
I will leave
on
my
television
address.
now.
If they leave it, send it to GBOA at 26 Regency Drive in Windsor, Connecticut, 06095. It's a tax-deductible contribution. Yes. And then at any time, if there is a contribution to help pay the cost of sending the books and materials to Ghana, that's appreciated also. But if there's an interest, by all means, contact us.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you
My
so much
pleasure.
for coming. It's been wonderful.
Oh, wow, thank you.
Hasn't this been great? Dr. Shirley Childs, a resident of Windsor, one of my dearest friends. I hope that we'll be able to have her on and she can give us some more progress about what's going on in Ghana and in her life. And in her life in Windsor, I'm going to push her toward that.
Okay.
So we've had a very special time today, and I hope you appreciate it. Until next time, be good to yourself and others.